Dante's Divine Comedy. I'd like to go over some background to this first. So, the Divine Comedy is composed of three books: the Inferno, which is about hell; the Purgatorio, which is about paradise; Purgatorio, which is about purgatory; and Paradiso, which is about heaven or paradise. So, a little bit of historical background. It was written in the year around the year 1300, and this is a map of Europe at that time. Northern Dante is from Florence here in northern Italy, and northern Italy, including Florence, at that time was part of the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation in the 13th and 14th centuries. It's called the Holy Roman Empire, but really it is a German empire, which is why it's sometimes called the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation. Italian cities like Florence had become centers of trade between Europe and the Far East via the Mediterranean Sea. In Italy, there were two political parties at war with each other: the Guelphs, who were the pro-papal party, and the Ghibellines, who were the pro-imperial party. So one was for the Pope, one was for the Holy Roman Emperor, to try to basically supporting which one you think should have more power in the empire. In Florence, the Guelphs, or the papal party, had triumphed and driven the Ghibellines completely out of Florence. But the victorious Guelphs divided into warring factions amongst themselves. There were the white Guelphs, who thought that the Pope should be only a spiritual leader, but not a political leader. They believed that the Roman Empire should be restored, or the Holy Roman Empire. And then there's the black Guelphs, who were happy to have a politically and militarily powerful Pope to lead them. So those were the political parties in Florence at the time that Dante is writing. And Dante was very involved in politics, and he, as you will see, was a white Guelph who thought that the Pope should be a spiritual leader, not a political leader. So at this time, there was also two heresies that came up: the Cathars and the Albigensians. An army was gathered, and they were eliminated. The Pope declared a crusade against them. So the Albigensians and the Cathars were heretical groups that basically believed that humans were spiritual beings who were trapped in a body, and that the body and that the physical world were evil. And this heresy was related to Gnosticism, and was a crusade was declared against it by the Pope, and it was completely stamped out. Many of them were killed. Around this time also, the Franciscans and the Dominicans, two new religious orders, were founded. And of course, the Dominicans were the order of preachers that went around preaching to people to try and bring about their conversion through reasoning with them. And the Franciscans tried to exemplify the life of dedicated to complete poverty. They felt that the riches of the church had corrupted it, and that it would be better if priests, at least in their order, were to swear off riches of any sort and live completely off charity and owning nothing. So Dante was born, Dante Alighieri. He was an Italian poet and writer. He was born in AD 1265 and died in AD 1321. Only shortly after finishing his greatest book, which is the Divine Comedy, or the three parts of it. He now, when Dante was young, he grew up in Florence, Italy, which was a large trade center in the southern part of the Holy Roman Empire, and this is before Italy was a country. When he was young, he met a girl named Beatrice. He was only 9 when he met her. He never spoke to her, but he fell madly in love with her. He encountered her again at age 18, but never spoke to her. But she dominated his thoughts. This idea of loving someone that you don't know is was typical of a common form of literature at the time called courtly love. A good example of courtly love would be the stories of King Arthur and Guinevere and Lancelot, who was constantly in love with Guinevere. That's a very good example of it because in courtly love, you usually love somebody that you're not really very intimate with, at least not in a legitimate way. You are, the man is in love with a woman that is unattainable, often because maybe, like in the case of Guinevere, she was married to someone else. So it has some bad things to it. So Dante, later after his exile, wrote a book and poem about Beatrice called La Vita Nuova. So Beatrice actually married someone else, and Dante married someone else. They never got married to each other, but yet she continued to dominate his thoughts throughout his life, and even in his final book. So courtly love, again, is the romantic. It's the romantic idea of a forbidden secret love of a man for an unattainable woman, not for his wife, like Lancelot and Guinevere. So Beatrice was later wed to a nobleman, not to Dante, but Dante still loved her. She died of a sickness at a very young age, but Dante's obsession with her did not end there. All right. So Book 1 of the Divine Comedy is called the Inferno. It's about hell. Inferno is just the Italian word for hell. Virgil leads Dante through the 9 circles of hell, descending to the center of the earth, where Satan is held at the furthest point from God. So I should point out that hell is envisioned as a deep pit that starts at the surface of the earth and goes down to the center of the earth. All the damned, those who are in hell, have physical bodies so they can feel pain, but their bodies heal so that they can never be permanently destroyed. These shades, or spirits, have some insignificant, these shades have some insight into the future, but they cannot perceive what is happening on earth in the present moment. So Dante and the people in hell can exchange information because Dante knows what's going on now. They know what's going to go on in the future. Some of the souls are excited by the chance to speak to a living human who can carry their messages back to the surface, while others are ashamed and aggressive towards him. Down in the pit of hell, Dante learns the cause and consequences of being cut off eternally from God's love. Nature is God's creation, imbued with his love, so that anything that goes against nature or God or any flawed love will keep the soul from paradise. The whole system is legalistic and logical. The punishment fits the crime, and the gravity of the offenses increase with the crescendo of fear, horror, pity, and revulsion experienced and evoked by Dante. Here is what befalls those who go against God, and not only Dante, but the whole world is vividly warned of what awaits them if they persist in doing so. Along the way, Dante meets and talks to many of the dead, all of whom have some significance to Dante and his first audience, and who collectively give a strong message regarding how a soul can go wrong and the disasters awaiting if it does so. All right, so Canto 1. The Divine Comedy is divided into 100 cantos, or chapters, you could say, or songs. Canto literally means song. It is a poem. The version that we're reading is not very poetic. It's more of what's called a prose version, where you're telling it like a story. But the original in Italian is in poetry. And of course, poetry doesn't carry over very well from one language to another without losing the original meaning, which is why we're not trying to do an English poetic version of this. There are 34 cantos in the Inferno about hell, 33 about Purgatorio, and 33 about heaven or Paradiso. So it's divided into 3 even parts, basically. And the first canto is kind of an introduction. Here's the first part of it. In the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself in a dark wood where the direct way was lost. It is a hard thing to speak of how wild, harsh, and impenetrable that wood was, so that thinking of it recreates the fear. It is scarcely less bitter than death. But in order to tell of the good that I found there, I must tell of the other things I saw there. I cannot rightly say how I entered it. I was so full of sleep that at that point where I abandoned the true way, but when I reached the foot of a hill where the valley that had pierced my heart with fear came to an end, I looked up and saw its shoulders brighten with the rays of that sun that leads men rightly on every road. Then the fear that had settled in the lake of my heart through the night that I had spent so miserably became a little calmer. And as a man who, with panting breath, has escaped from the deep sea to the shore, turns back toward the perilous waters and stares, so my mind, still fugitive, turned back to see that pass again, that no living person ever left. So in Canto 1, Dante is lost and afraid in a dark woods. He tries to ascend a mountain that is in front of him. So the mountain kind of represents ascending towards heaven. He tries to go towards God. But he finds himself blocked by a leopard, a lion, and a wolf. And these could represent lots of things. They could represent the 3 basic types of sin in hell. They could represent perhaps the emperor, the pope, and personal sin. But anyway, they are obstructions. These animals are obstructions to being able to ascend upwards on the mountain towards God. He encounters a stranger and begs for help, and the stranger turns out to be the shade or the spirit of Virgil. Virgil was the Roman author of the Aeneid and Dante's great literary hero. Dante was a huge fan of the Aeneid, and Virgil tells him that he must take another road. He must go down into hell first. He can't ascend directly to heaven. He must go down into hell first and then work his way up. This would mirror Christ's own experience. When he died on the cross, he first went to hell before rising and then ascending into heaven. So Virgil says that he will guide Dante away from this dangerous place into the afterlife. Dante's not going to die, but he's going to follow Virgil through the afterlife and see hell and purgatory and eventually heaven. Dante follows him. Dante here is being compared by himself to Aeneas. And Aeneas was the Trojan leader who escaped from the burning town of Troy to eventually go to Italy and become the great ancestor of the founders of the Roman Empire. So he's being compared to Aeneas, who, by the way, Aeneas also takes a trip through hell in the Aeneid that Virgil wrote. And he's also being compared to St. Paul. So Aeneas is working to found the Roman Empire. St. Paul is working to establish the church throughout the Roman Empire. And Virgil actually compares them to these two in Canto 1. So this echoes his theme throughout the book of the need for a reformed church and a reformed empire. So Dante thinks that the church should stop being so political and so involved in politics. You have popes at this time that are engaging in wars and things like that, which he thinks is wrong. And he thinks that the empire should take political control and that the emperor should be the one leader of all Christians in the political realm, and the Pope should be the one leader of all Christians in the spiritual realm. But there should be a division between the two so that they're not crossing into each other's territory where the emperor is trying to manipulate the Pope and the Pope is trying to take power away from the emperor by fighting wars and things like this. So there are three great themes in the Divine Comedy. One is the individual's quest for salvation. All right. So hell is kind of like sin. Purgatory is like repentance. Heaven is like communion with God. All right. And so as individuals, we all have this journey towards God, and it involves all three of these: sin, repentance, and communion. Or it should, if it's going to be complete, it needs to involve all three of these. The second great theme, besides the individual's quest for salvation, is the world's need for political salvation. Dante lives in a world where there's a power struggle between the church and the state. And there's a need to eliminate corruption in the church, to establish a strong Christian empire, and to make the church more spiritual and less worldly. And then the third great theme is the pursuit of true love. So Dante is very in love with Beatrice in a courtly love type way to start with. But as time goes on, Beatrice actually leads him towards God, and he is able to purify his life of the lustful feelings that he at first has, and ultimately embrace true love, which is the love of God. Canto number 2. So Dante is fearful of descending into hell and expresses his doubts. Virgil explains that he has come because Beatrice from heaven appeared to him in hell and instructed him to bring Dante to her. So you remember, Beatrice died before Dante when she was very young. She is in heaven with God. She hears that Dante is in trouble and goes to Virgil and asks him to bring Dante through hell to purgatory and eventually to heaven, where she will guide him through heaven and show him what that's like. So Beatrice had been prompted to do this by St. Lucia, who's Dante's patron saint, and St. Lucia was prompted by the Blessed Virgin Mary to do this, according to the Canto. So Dante was once in love with Beatrice, but she died many years earlier, and she is now in heaven. Thrilled at the prospect of seeing Beatrice again, Dante commits himself to this difficult journey. This is a picture of Beatrice appearing to Virgil and asking him to help Dante. Canto 3. Canto 3. So at Canto 3, Virgil and Dante arrive at the gates of hell. There's a quote here from the Aeneid by Virgil. This is not in our book, but this is from the book that Dante loves so much, the Aeneid. It says, "The gates of hell are open night and day. Smooth the descent and easy is the way. But to return and view the cheerful skies, in this the task and mighty labor lies." So a very short way of saying that is, Virgil is saying, the way to hell is easy. It's all downhill. It's easy going. Coming back out of hell, much harder. When they get to the gates of hell, they see a sign on the gates of hell. And by the way, I'm going to give you some other images here. I just wanted to show you this picture. There's actually a place called the Gates of Hell, which is in Darvaza, Turkmenistan. And it's this big crater that has this never-ending fire from gas that leaks out from underneath the crater. That's been going on for hundreds of years. And people go to visit this as a tourist thing, but it fits in nicely with Dante's vision of hell as a pit in the earth. All right, so at the gates of hell, there is a sign, and it says, this is from Canto 3, "Through me the way to the infernal city. Through me the way to eternal sadness. Through me the way to the lost people. Justice moved my supreme maker. I was shaped by the divine power, by highest wisdom and by primal love. Before me nothing was created that is not eternal, and eternal I endure. Forsake all hope, all you that enter here." Or as the gate here says, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." It's another translation of the same thing. All right, so as they approach the border of hell, Virgil and Dante see the swarm of the neutrals, people who lived empty lives, pointless lives, scarcely living at all, just existing. They did nothing truly good or bad, following the herd unthinkingly, so they do not deserve a place in either heaven or hell. Dante is contemptuous of them, not bothering to name any of them, but he hints that Pope Celestine V, he who made the great refusal, he was a pope who resigned during Dante's lifetime in 1294, is there. He's in that part of hell. Virgil leads Dante to the river Acheron, which is on the border of hell, where Chiron, the demonic ferryman, is ferrying souls to hell on the far bank of the river. Chiron refuses to take Dante on board because his soul has not yet died, is not yet damned, and the ground shakes with wind and fire, causing Dante to pass out. Some pictures of the structure of hell here. Canto 4. Dante regains consciousness on the other side of the river, and he is now inside hell. He and Virgil advance to the first circle of hell, where Virgil himself actually lives. This is called Limbo, the place of the virtuous heathens. Here, all the good people who were not Christians end up in a fairly nice environment, except for the fact that it is cut off eternally from God's love. So Dante spots many of his great poetic heroes there: Homer, Cicero, Aeneas, Socrates, among a number of others. And he gets made a member of the Dead Poets Society, of the famous poets of the history of Greece and Rome. Canto 5. So this starts, starting now with the second circle, as he moves on from Limbo, we go into the sins of weakness or lack of self-control. And these are the least serious sins which can condemn someone to hell. And they are sins of lacking self-control. So let's look at that. At the start of the second circle, there's a demonic figure called Minos, who is judging the wicked and condemning them to their fates below. The second circle itself is filled with the lustful, those who loved so passionately that there was no space for God in their hearts. They loved in the wrong way. Stormy winds buffet the souls around, and they are subjected to the gales as they were once subjected to their desires. Dante stops to speak with Francesca and her brother-in-law Paolo, who were two doomed, murdered lovers. All right, they were so Francesco and Paolo float over to him and tell them their story. Basically, Francesca was married to Paolo's brother, but she spent too much time with Paolo when her brother wasn't home. They started reading stories of courtly love, specifically about Lancelot and Guinevere, fell in love with each other, kissed each other, and then were subsequently murdered by Paolo's brother, Francesca's husband, when he found out about it. Dante faints after hearing their story, and that ends his journey through the second level of hell, which is the level of the lustful, those who whose main sin was lust. Canto 6. The third circle of hell is the gluttons, or those who eat too much. And they are guarded by Cerberus, the three-headed dog. There's a picture here. Passing Cerberus, Dante and Virgil cross the third circle, where the gluttons lie beaten down in the stench of the mud. Cerberus, by the way, is a legendary figure from, I think, from the Aeneid. One of these people that's in the mud, Ciacco, recognizes Dante. He knew him in life because they knew each other in Florence. Ciacco tells Dante the depth of evil in Florence and how much suffering the citizens will soon experience. He can see the future. As they move on, Dante asks Virgil what will happen to all the damned souls on Judgment Day, and Virgil says that their suffering will become even greater. Canto 7. The fourth circle are the avaricious and the prodigal. So avarice, and this circle is guarded by Plutus, who is the god of wealth in Roman mythology. And avariciousness means trying to get as much wealth and money for yourself as you can. And then, of course, there's the opposite side of that coin, which is the prodigals or the spendthrifts, those who waste their money. They have wealth, but they waste it on stupid stuff. And both of these are seen as grave sins by Dante. Lack of self-control. Again, these levels here are sins of lack of self-control. So the avaricians and the prodigals were obsessed with wealth, whether hoarding it or spending it. They are now two bitter tribes, all individuality stripped away. Virgil gives a speech about fortune. He talks a little bit about the Wheel of Fortune, things like that. And you can see Dante's influence from Boethius here, and leads Dante through the fifth circle. And by the way, this is a picture of the avaricious and the spendthrifts pushing stones up and down a hill in a pointless activity, which is supposed to show how pointless their activity on earth was, of just trying to collect wealth and not use it for some good purpose. So he leads Dante to the fifth circle of hell now, where the wrathful fight viciously in a boiling mire. This is near the river Styx. The angry and the wrathful are trying to emerge from the mud, and they're wrestling with each other. And their main sin was that they couldn't control their temper, right? They were wrathful. So the mire... Canto 8. So they then come to the river Styx, and there's a ferry across the river Styx. The mire of the wrathful flows into the marshes of the river Styx, and a ferryman appears to carry them deeper into hell. Phlegus, who is one of the wrathful, is the ferryman, and as they cross the Styx, the river Styx, another of the wrathful spirits rises up from the marsh and tries to talk to Dante. Dante recognizes him as Filippo Argenti. And he was a fellow citizen of Florence and roundly abuses him, taking pleasure in Argenti's suffering. On the other side of the Styx, the river Styx, is the cursed city of Dis. It is heavily fortified. So Dis is another word for Satan or the devil. And it's a heavily fortified city, and Dante and Virgil approach the gate. As they approach the gate of the city of Dis, on the other side of the Styx, a horde of rebel angels or demons try to stop them from entering the city. Dante is terrified and wants to turn back, but Virgil tries to talk to them, but they slam the gate of the city in his face. They don't want to let Dante in because he's alive, And they'd say, well, you can stay Virgil, but this guy's got to go. He can't come in here. And by the way, the city of Dis is kind of Satan's copy, so to speak, of God, the city of God, right? So hell is his fortified city. Heaven is God's fortified city. So as the two of them then are, as we move on here now to Canto 9, the two of them are standing outside the city of Dis, and they're locked out. The Furies, from Greek mythology, threaten to turn Dante into stone with Medusa, whom they're going to bring and show to him, and then once he sees Medusa, he will turn to stone. But then an angel appears, scattering the damned, and opens the door so that Virgil and Dante can proceed into the city of Dis and deeper into the realms of hell. Inside the walls of the city of Dis is the sixth circle. Here's the angel opening the door of the city of Dis. And then once they get inside the walls, they find the sixth circle of hell, the heretics. So the heretics are crammed together into tombs that are roasted by flames eternally. So then we move on to Canto 10. Dante encounters two leading Florentines, or citizens of Florence, from the previous generation, Farinata and Cavalcante. In life, they led opposing factions, opposing political parties, and were part of the civil strife that had caused so much damage to Florence. But in death, they are forced to share a tomb together, equally guilty of the heresies of their parties. And just to remind you, the heresies of their parties, there was the Ghibellines and the Guelphs. One party believed that the emperor should have all the power, and the other party believed the Pope should have all the power. And Dante doesn't really agree with either one of them. He believes that the Pope has spiritual authority but not political authority, and that the emperor should have political authority but not spiritual authority. All right, Canto 11. Virgil and Dante rest now to get their breath before descending into the three lowest circles of hell. As they pause, Virgil takes the opportunity to explain to Dante the structure of hell and the logic that explains the system. The earlier circles that they've already traveled through, out before the walls of Dis, were the sins of weakness or a lack of self-control. Now they are within the realm of the greater sins, those of willfulness, those of purposely doing something wrong. All right, so the earlier stages of hell were people that just couldn't control themselves. Okay, they didn't know how to control themselves. The lowest levels of hell now are people that actually, it's not that they can't control themselves, it's that they purposely do something wrong. The seventh circle is for the violent, the eighth circle is for the fraudulent, and the ninth circle is for the treacherous. Fraud, says Virgil, is worse than violence because it is using uniquely human abilities for evil purposes, and treachery is the worst kind of fraud because it betrays a sacred bond of trust. So Virgil is kind of giving a ranking of the different types of sin that are in hell as an abuse of free will against neighbor, self, and God. All right, so using your free will to abuse either your neighbor, yourself, or God. So level 1, again, that was where the people who were apathetic, they refused to use their free will, and also the unbaptized, the virtuous pagans, they were unable to use their free will because they didn't have the knowledge of God or of Jesus. All right. Levels 2 through 4 of hell are about a lack of self-control, the lustful, the gluttonous, and the avaricious and spendthrifts. Okay, they were not able to control themselves. They had weak free will. All right. Levels 4 through 6 are kind of about violence, okay? Using free will to kill the self or others spiritually or physically. And level 7 through 9 are about fraud, using free will to deceive others, self, or God. Okay, so there's a lot more that could be said about all this stuff, but I think it's important that you understand the basic story of what's going on in this first part of the Inferno. Hopefully this helps to explain it in a pretty straightforward way. Have a great week, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.